So we're going to take a look at where are we now in 2023. Recall that the original goal was to give students access to advanced math courses in high school and access to other advanced courses, because sometimes those were tied to the advanced math courses, or the opportunities to be in other advanced courses were tied to whether or not you were in advanced math courses. And the path to advanced high school math was found to be linked to having had algebra in middle school. So that's why there was such a focus on algebra and access to algebra in middle school. It wasn't so much that algebra in middle school was the end goal. The end goal was having access to the advanced courses in high school. And this is a chart from one of the school systems that showed the different math paths back when we first started working on these efforts. And you can see we've highlighted the honors courses and the AP courses, and only the paths that have algebra in middle school have any AP or honors math courses on them. And that Algebra 1 Plus there, that elective, that used to be in place in many school districts for the students who took Algebra 1 in middle school and didn't do well. They would then retake it as an elective in high school so that they could stay on the honors path. And there was no other way onto the honors path. You couldn't take that elective if you hadn't had algebra in middle school.
Part of the math discussion, it was our intent, short-term, long-term, midterm, however, to also look at other course prerequisites. We didn't really intend to stop at math, but to look at all course prerequisites across the district. That was the road we started down, and as you indicated,
that's what that the equity policy was looking at.
Right. And so that was part of our intent, was to look at English and language, all prerequisites, to make sure that there was not this subjectivity in other course areas as well. We just never got to it.
Somehow we need to make sure, I'm not sure if this is research or practice, that when principals start doing some of the things that we're talking about today, they're going to need to have political cover. Because this is a whole radical way of thinking. Very radical. And if principals don't do this right, they are going to get run out of their schools by the community. There are certain communities that don't want this thing. We might as well be well assured of that. So I really believe that principals are going to have some political cover when they start making some of these radical decisions about children getting rigorous coursework and getting the most qualified, most effective teacher. When those teachers have been used to being placed somewhere else, you're going to need some cover for that.
So the country club parents don't kill them. Just say it, Marvin.
So the country club parents don't kill them.
One of the things that we saw when the math board policy went into place in Wake County was that some of the schools started doing single subject acceleration in elementary school, where they would put fifth graders in an advanced math course, and that covered fifth and sixth grade math, so that they could take algebra in seventh grade instead of eighth grade. And students were invited into this course, which was not covered by the math placement policy because it didn't exist when the math placement policy went into place. And they claimed that they were using objective academic criteria to identify the students. But it turned out a review of the data showed that about half the students who were in this single subject acceleration didn't meet the criteria, and about half of those who met the criteria were not in the course. And this is where some of those 504s come into play, because sometimes the students with 504s don't have to meet the criteria. It's part of their accommodation. At least that's what we were told. Now this is from 2012, and this is a recommendation for math placement in one of the middle schools. And you can see that in sixth grade, Math 7 Plus is the course that you would go into if you had compacted 5-6 in elementary school. But you must have had that. So that's a gate to get you into a rigorous course. And the placement criteria didn't address that. And I believe the new legislation does, but there's no accountability that I can see for that. And different churches and advocacy groups started coming to EdStar with data that they got from public data requests to have us look at the data and see what we could tell them. And one of the things that we saw was the number of students taking 7th grade algebra just went way up. And a lot of students were taking 8th grade algebra, but it was like 7th grade algebra had become the gate. The gate had just moved. Then another thing that we saw all over the state, working with different school systems on different programs, we saw students who took Math 1 in 8th grade, and then they were re-enrolled in Math 1 as freshmen in 9th grade, even when they had earned A's and B's. And we had parents coming to us through churches, several churches that we work with, asking us to look at their child's courses for 9th grade and wondering, why are they taking Math 1 again? And I don't know why, but we did see a lot of that. And then we also saw that the math courses in high school were offered basically 3 different ways. There is no honors Math 1 because that's basically, you took it in middle school. But you could take the course as 2 courses and just cover the material in 2 classes instead of 1 class. And the Foundations of Math 1 paired with Math 1 was described as a more remedial class for struggling students. But that's not who we saw in the class. We had 11 school districts that we had to report what math courses the kids were taking on one of the federal grants. And we saw plenty of level 4 and 5 students taking the Math Foundations, the 2-course version, which is not even the standard version of Math 1 and Math 2. It's the remedial version. And by the way, that was relatively recently that we were looking at that data. Then also worth noting, to get the full picture of math course taking in North Carolina, this is the math graduation requirements, and they've come out with new versions of this, but it's basically the same. Some of the courses have changed, but these are the math requirements. And we at EdStar had mistakenly believed that all students who graduated from high school in North Carolina took 4 courses that would qualify them to meet the minimum graduation requirements for our state schools and our community college. We have open enrollment in community college, but if you have not scored a certain score on your ACT math portion, or you did not take 4 math courses off of the list of accepted math courses, then you have to do remediation in community college. And we and many other people in education, because they told us everyone has to take those. But what we learned was that's not actually the case. And the one column there, the sort of greenish one, says these are the courses accepted as a 4th math credit for students planning to attend other colleges, community college, or a technical school. And what we hadn't realized, you can get math credits for CTE courses. So everyone graduates with 4 math credits, but you may not have 4 math courses because you can get math credit for courses that are not math courses. And then there's a little note there that says students using CTE courses to meet math credit graduation requirements will be required to complete math placement testing prior to enrolling in community college math courses. Well, not only do you have to take the math placement testing, if you don't pass it, which is true of a lot of students, like nearly half of them who take, nearly half of the students who go to community college, if you don't pass the placement test, you have to take not-for-credit math courses. And that is a big issue. It's not the one I'm talking about here, but it's one to keep in mind. And there are programs in place to try to deal with this, but they're remediation programs. Now, the purple column is for substitution, and there are courses that can be substituted for the 3rd and 4th math class, and the 1st and 2nd math class can count as 4 if the principal substitutes them. If for students who took the pair of courses where 2 courses together cover the material of Math 1, the foundations of Math 1 / Math 1 as 2 different courses, and the same for Math 2. The principal can do substitution on that, and the instructions on the DPI's website and that we heard from different school systems are this is supposed to be in rare cases, but we saw it happening in much more frequently than what you would call rare. And we had one school system tell us that they were encouraging students to do this just in case they needed to do the substitution, that they would have them take the foundations of math and then Math 1 as 2 courses, just to kind of hedge their bet that in case they couldn't pass 4 math classes, the principal could substitute these. So we saw students taking 8th grade algebra and then taking these remedial versions of Math 1 and foundations of Math 1 and Math 2 foundations when they got to high school. So they got in what used to be the gate, but then they got derailed. And maybe we could get some idea as to how many students took the remedial path through Math 1 and Math 2 by taking it 2 courses at a time and then got substitution by looking at the number of students who took Math 3, because we now have a Math 3 end of course, but the ends are not reported. Only the percent of students, so we don't know how many students this is. This is the 2018 legislation that requires all students who score at the highest level on their math end of grade test to be placed into an advanced learning opportunity in elementary school or advanced math courses in grades 6 and up. So that would include high school. And the highest level right now is level 5. And the law was updated in 2019 to require an annual report. So this is where we're at. So there's a link to the report to the General Assembly in the Best NC's Facts and Figures. And in this report is this table where it shows that in grades 6 through 13, students placed and not placed, and I took the gender one because that gives us everybody, but it shows that the number of students who scored at the highest level on their last standardized test was 49,000, and 45,000 of them were placed. Now, the curious thing about that, if we look at the analyses that SAS was doing in 2009, in 2009 we had 54,000 7th graders when we were using EBOS to predict advanced math placement, and that's just one grade. And now that we're using level 5, we had 49,000 6th through 13th grade, compared to in 2009 we had 54,000 7th graders. But according to the way this is written, this legislation should take care of allowing students who score at the highest level on Math 1 to enroll in honors Math 2 and on from there. So I looked to see how many students last year scored level 5 in Math 1. And here's what I found. According to the North Carolina report cards, nobody scored level 5. So there would be no one who would be protected by this legislation to be able to advocate for themselves to be able to enroll in advanced math. It may be less than 5% because they won't report less than 5%, but from the data that we have access to on the NC school report cards, no one scored level 5 in Math 1. And that chart is for the same year that's represented here. So that means there's no one who took Math 1 included in those numbers. Maybe that's why the numbers are so small. I would look at the data to determine how many students in middle school take Math 1 before 8th grade, because this provides some information about acceleration in middle school. And it's difficult to look at a data set and know who was accelerated in middle school. So I would look at those numbers and compare them to the number in the elementary schools who scored level 5 as just a comparison check. Report the number of students who repeat Math 1 in high school after they passed it in middle school, because we were seeing a lot of that. and report the number of students taking Foundations of Math 1 and Math 1 as the 2 course version, and look at their previous EOG scores, and look at that by subgroup, and also by region of the state and schools. And because we also saw a lot of that, and we saw a lot of level 4 and 5 students taking this remedial version of high school math. And I would want to know, why are we using a criteria that identifies so few students? It's like we have fewer students qualified than in the past. And did a scale score cut change? Like, why do we have no one scoring level 5 in Math 1 on the EOC? And if we change the scale score cut so that level 5 is defined differently, why?